I'm ready to follow you now, okay? Hello, welcome back to Ballroom Feed. Today we're gonna be talking about how to follow a dance partner, okay? So I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks. These are very generalized and it's gonna be dependent on the dance specifically, but I'm gonna give you my best tips to start, okay? So what you can do if you have a dance partner is we can play a little game. We're gonna go through this super quickly. We've kind of done some stuff like this before, but we're just gonna place our hands up in front of each other. So this is our common center, as we maybe know, maybe don't, which means we're sharing the center. We don't want to move out of it. We don't want to move into it. We don't want to move around it. We just want to stay put. So we talk a lot about the leader kind of doing this, but we don't talk about how the follower is equally responsible for maintaining her own common center and maintaining a little bit of tone here. So a good way to think about this is how do we connect to our dance partner? First, easiest way is to place let's say 2 to 3 pounds of weight towards one another without moving the common center. So this is just gonna create an energy towards one another. That way, if he were to move any direction, go ahead, Chris. I can do my best to just go with the flow wherever he goes. Of course, it's gonna be easier if we have a base dance, but I'm just kind of going with him. Good. Okay, so tip number 1 is just to connect by using a little bit of weight and tone and energy with your partner, keeping the common center consistent. So a big one is gonna be maintaining your own posture, your own frame, and then of course, trying to have your balance over your own 2 feet without leaning on your partner, because a lot of times when we start to place a little bit of weight from the first thing, sometimes we place too much, and then we're actually kind of falling on top of our leader, which is definitely a no-no. So actually we should talk about posture first. So maintaining, we can both practice this, leader and follower, because it is important for both rows. But today we're talking about the followers mainly. So we're gonna start with our feet together. We're gonna think about having a not tucked center and not an arched back, but just a neutral spine. So that means it's just gonna be right underneath our hips, okay? From here, we're gonna think proud chest, long neck. We're not gonna think anything up. We're not gonna think anything down, just neutral for now. And then we're just gonna breathe in and let it go so that we're not so stiff. So this is just a general nice posture. We wanna maintain this active and throughout whatever dance we're doing. So that being said, yeah, we don't wanna slump over, we don't wanna let it go. This is just gonna keep our own balance and energy on our own 2 feet, okay? So this is gonna go hand in hand with balance. In the beginning, this is important. Don't look at his feet, it's not gonna help you. Try to understand your own footwork, we'll talk about that later. So now that we have a good posture, we're gonna connect into a basic dance position, no specific dance. You can go ahead and watch our videos on that if you'd like to know more. So a good tip in the beginning, followers, no matter what dance you're doing, is to place your hand in front of his shoulder and then push away a little bit so it's kind of pushing into this hand right here. So what this is gonna do is maintain our own space, and it's gonna make it easier for me to feel when he goes forward and then sometimes even when he goes backward, okay? So now that we have our own frame, we wanna make sure we're not kind of going and dropping everything on him. We wanna make sure we're lifting our own frame. So we're not using his arm as like a resting point. We're actually keeping it active. You can connect this, that's a little bit more advanced. We won't talk about that too much today. Mainly pushing away here and lifting our own elbows. And then here, what we're gonna do for now is we're just gonna maintain that same connection and tone that we had earlier. There are other ways to do it. This is just a basic way. Okay, so now from here, we can do the same kind of thing as we started. We can practice doing whatever steps, maybe if you have a leader to practice with. So go ahead, Chris, move in any direction. I'm gonna do my best to follow. Good. Okay, so now we talked about a few things. We talked about tone to your partner, common center, having your own posture, and maintaining your own frame. So we haven't really done any forward and back steps, so let's try that for a second. So now what's really important, kind of going along with our common center now, but this is clearer, this part not so much. So what we don't want to do is let our own elbows kind of move, because so that helps by putting it in front of the shoulder. So if he were to take a forward step, for example, I'm going to push into his shoulder. That way I don't collapse and kind of let him run me over. So let's do a bad one for a second, Chris. Go ahead. I'm gonna let myself go, and now you can see we're playing bumper cars. I'm sure if you've tried dancing with somebody and you're not familiar with these concepts, that might have happened. Very awkward, very uncomfortable, and it makes it almost impossible for him to lead me. So maintaining my own frame and not letting my elbows go behind me when we're walking backwards is really important. So make sure that you maintain your frame, keep it where it is. Don't let your common center break and it come behind you, okay? At any point, really, you don't need to let that happen, okay? So that being said, those are a few things in the frame. Let's talk about now the biggest one before we talk about kind of steps and stuff is patience. So really the biggest key to following without all these tips and tricks on how to connect to your partner is just waiting, right? So even though we maybe know the dance step we're supposed to be doing, if we assume something, he might be actually intending on leading us through something else. So for example, if we use a Foxy basic, I might think that he's doing a rock turn, but really he wanted to do a forward rock, and now I've kind of ruined what he had planned, and now I'm no longer following, I'm actually backleading, which is something that we definitely don't want to do in the ballroom world, okay? So patience and just trying to wait for him to actually give us the cue. So that means we don't want to be lifting and turning ourselves at any point. We don't want to kind of run away from him. We want to just stay with him and just wait. I say followers have more fun because we have a little less focus sometimes, and sometimes that can even help us out. Okay, so now we talked about all those things. It's time to talk about dance steps. So depending on the dance that you're doing, in order to follow better, even though I said patience is the key, we actually do want to understand our own basic foot directions, timing, rhythm, etc. So say you're learning how to do the Foxy, we want to make sure we understand where we should actually be going. So even though sometimes it's maybe ideal for him to lead us, we also want to understand and be responsible for our own foot directions. Okay, so for example, for the Foxy basic, even though he's going to be leading me, I want to make sure I know that I go back, back, side step, sway, sway. So the foot directions and the timing, of course, for ourselves is very important. The next thing, which I kind of just mentioned, is understanding the timing and the rhythm of each dance style. This is going to make following so much easier because even if you don't necessarily know all of these steps, you can sometimes get away with following as long as you maintain the basic rhythm. In any like beginner level dance, the rhythm won't change for each dance step. So if it's Foxy, it's easy. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, or just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's keeping that same pace throughout. If it's salsa, it's always gonna be quick, quick, slow, quick, quick, slow. If you're counting in numbers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, salsa on 1. So those kinds of things will stay consistent. So if you know the basic steps, sometimes you can actually follow things that you've never even learned if you understand A, how to connect to your partner, all the things I talked about previously, and the basic rhythm of the dance. Maybe the basic step would be helpful. Then you can kind of follow a lot of things you actually don't know. So sometimes that can be really cool. I think my final tip for you is gonna be, if you're social dancing and your goal is just to be able to how to follow anybody, then I think practicing with a multitude of partners is really important. Sometimes if you're practicing only with one person, but then wanting to be able to follow anybody, it's really difficult because some person might be maybe a little bit of a stronger leader, somebody might be a lighter leader, or maybe someone's more experienced, so they're a little bit easier to follow, someone's not as experienced. So obviously that's gonna be more difficult. But the more you practice with different people, the easier you're gonna pick up on different cues. But if you are competing with somebody, I'd say practicing with the same partner the majority of the time is most important because you want to be able to connect to that person the most. So it depends on your goals there. So that is all my tips. We'll bring Chris back in as a leader perspective, and he can kind of give you some of his tips on what he thinks is the best thing to follow other than what I've said.
So when it comes like my perspective for following, I think that this something easy to say is that it's really just about her being on her own balance the entire time and feeling like she understands where to put herself, because I feel like people don't consciously assume they're gonna go into a pattern necessarily. It's more that they kind of fell over and they fall into the next step rather than thinking they knew what was coming next. So one small example, like if we did a rhythm and whatnot, that she has a place to start in, and you can already see like she understands where to put her body. Where if we just kind of stand here like this and she doesn't really know where to put herself, it's easy to kind of fall off balance as I start to move myself. And then if we take one step, she knows where to be at the end of the step and she's very organized, where if she didn't know what to do with herself, she'd probably fall already into the next step. So that's one perspective of like, you should be able to take one step at a time through any dance you have and pause and go, yeah, I know where my body's supposed to be and I'm not gonna fall into anything. And that if he were to pause, I feel like I could just be in that place. That's one thing. The other thing is that we ask a lot of the leaders in terms of like carrying us around the floor, that She mentioned knowing the basic and whatnot. You want to feel like as a follower that you know just as many steps and patterns and you understand how they go together as well as a leader does. Because if you don't, then you're asking him or anybody to kind of push you through everything because you have no idea how everything goes together. So especially female teachers, like Linz herself could do tango or waltz or foxtrot, and she could dance all the dance completely by herself, put all the patterns together, and she could get around the floor with no problem. Where a lot of female students who follow couldn't do anything more than the basic because they always look at the leader to then decide how things get put together because they have no idea how even some of the basics really get put together back to back. So you as a follower want to feel like, even if it's salsa or bachata, you want to feel like you can put some of these basics together and you could dance on your own, not needing somebody to lead you and tell you when certain things go back to back together. And that will give you a lot of confidence because you're like, oh, I actually know the dance on my own. I'm not looking for somebody to kind of push me around through it.
Yeah, so it definitely depends on, I think, the style of your dance. So for example, he's talking about like ballroom dances are a little bit more specific. So it only requires like initiation and then the rest of the pattern at that point should kind of be easy. Like he shouldn't have to force you into every single step. It's really just the initiation of that first pattern, and then from there it should be pretty easy for you to follow.
Yeah.
Other dances like bachata and salsa, there's so many different variations out there that are actually, the leader changes a lot of them. So he'll make a foot fake or he'll change his foot direction, or the follower should stay consistent, and it's just like a change of direction for her. For example, like a turn or changing places, things like that. So those types of dances are much more like improvisational friendly, I guess. Whereas ballroom dances are a little more structured.
Well, there's a whole other theory of following, which is like maintaining rhythm, which we'll have a course where we go into all these, there's so many different aspects of this we'll go into specifically and break all these things down. But a maintaining of rhythm where, like a salsa or bachata, where she's responsible of just continuing dancing on the rhythm regardless of what I do, so that even if I bring her through something she's not even aware of, she can keep the feet moving the
If I just keep
time.
changing my weight in the rhythm on the same thing, it doesn't matter which direction I'm going, I'm just gonna maintain that.
Yeah, so we teach so many different styles, between the social dances, nightclub, ballroom, Latin rhythm. So again, we'll have the course, we break all these things down and try to separate some of the styles and philosophy-wise, how we approach leading and following these dances differently to have a lot of success.
So I hope that this video kind of gave you some helpful tips on things you could practice with a partner and maybe on your own. Also, if you did have a specific dance or a specific question about following or even leading, you can put that down in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. And like he said, we are planning bigger things around these topics because there's just endless things on both leading and following that we could really dive into, like he said. So we will for sure get that out to you eventually. That being said, we do have a website, ballroomfeed.com. We have so much content up there. So please go ahead and check it out and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Like this video if you did, subscribe for more, and we'll see you guys hopefully in the next one. Bye.